Hello, architecture enthusiasts and curious minds. Welcome back to the channel. Today, we're not just looking at buildings, we're delving into the very ideas that shape them. We're going to embark on a vital intellectual journey, tracing the profound impact of 19th century philosophies on the architectural theory that emerged in the late 19th and, crucially, the early 20th centuries. This was a period of revolutionary thought that redefined not just how we build, but why and what for. To understand this shift, let's briefly look back. In the 17th century and even earlier, a dominant belief held that an individual's purpose or essence was predetermined, often decided even before birth. This idea, captured by the phrase "essence precedes existence," meant that people's roles and life paths were largely set, and they generally adhered to societal rules and traditions. In architecture, this often translated into adherence to classical rules and established forms, as if the inherent essence of a building type dictated its design and function. However, as the 19th century progressed, the rapid rise of science and technology began to dismantle many of these old certainties. Life became easier for some, opening up time for deep reflection and existential questions like, if old beliefs are crumbling, what is the purpose of my existence? This intellectual upheaval paved the way for new philosophies, most notably existentialism, a movement fundamentally rooted in the 19th century, though truly flourishing in the 20th. Its father was the Danish philosopher Søren Kierkegaard, 1813 to 1855. Kierkegaard, despite his own faith, famously rejected rigid religious rules and traditions, asserting that individuals are solely responsible for their own lives, not any external system or religion. He believed it was up to each person to decide their connection to purpose without intermediaries. Building on these foundations, the 20th century French philosopher Jean-Paul Sartre, 1905 to 1980, famously declared the radical reversal: in the case of human beings, existence precedes essence. This means you come into being first, and then, as a free individual, you must decide and create your own meaning and purpose in life. This freedom, while empowering, also brings the heavy burden of absolute responsibility, leading to what's known as existential angst. You are condemned to be free, forced to carve your own path in a world that might seem inherently meaningless. How did this translate to architecture? This existentialist emphasis on individual creation and responsibility directly challenged the widespread practice of historical revivalism prevalent in the late 19th century. If individuals had to create their own meaning, then perhaps buildings too needed to express a new, self-defined purpose, rather than simply imitating the essence of past styles. This encouraged architects to break from rigid stylistic conformity and seek authentic expression tailored to contemporary needs and the building's unique context, rather than historical precedents. A key figure embodying this shift was Louis Sullivan, 1856 to 1924, active in the late 19th and early 20th centuries. While often associated with functionalism, his famous dictum, "Form ever follows function," was, in a way, an existentialist statement for architecture. He advocated for a building's form to be derived from its internal purpose and structure, rather than applied historical ornamentation. This was a direct rejection of a predetermined essence for a building type, instead asserting that its existence, its function and context should dictate its form. His groundbreaking skyscrapers, like the Wainwright Building, 1891 in St. Louis, eloquently expressed their internal organization, asserting a new self-defined architectural identity. Another visionary was Frank Lloyd Wright, 1867 to 1959, whose work spanned the late 19th and well into the 20th century. His philosophy of organic architecture emphasized a building's unique relationship with its site, its materials, and the specific needs of its inhabitants. Each of his buildings, like the Larkin Administration Building, 1906, or Fallingwater, 1937, was conceived as an individual, holistic entity, custom-created and distinct, rejecting universal prototypes or historical essences in favor of a unique, self-determined character, a very architectural form of individual meaning-making. Alongside existentialism, the 19th century also saw the roots of functionalism, which profoundly shaped architectural theory. This approach gained significant traction through the work of the late 19th century French philosopher and sociologist Émile Durkheim, 1858 to 1917. Durkheim saw society as a stable system of interrelated parts. Social institutions, like family, education, government, and economy, serve specific functions that contribute to maintaining overall societal stability and order, much like organs in an organism. The key idea here is functional kinds, something defined by its function or job, rather than its material composition. A mousetrap, for instance, is defined by its ability to trap mice, regardless of whether it's made of wood or plastic. Its purpose matters. This philosophy had a direct and powerful translation into architectural theory, giving rise to architectural functionalism, epitomized by the enduring adage, form follows function. Architects began to conceptualize buildings as complex systems where every component serves a specific utility, contributing to the overall efficiency and purpose of the structure. The focus shifted to utility, efficiency, and rational design, where the building's form was dictated by its intended use. This meant a deliberate departure from decorative excesses and a move towards streamlined, purposeful design that directly addressed human needs and activities, much like how societal institutions fulfill collective needs. Pioneers like Walter Gropius, 1883 to 1969, and the Bauhaus school, founded 1919 in Germany, were stalwarts of this approach in the early 20th century. They advocated for designs that were stripped of ornament, directly expressing their function, materials, and methods of construction. The Bauhaus building in Dessau, 1926, itself is a perfect example, with its distinct wings clearly articulating their different functions, like workshops, student housing, and administration. Le Corbusier, 1887 to 1965, a hugely influential Swiss-French architect of the early to mid-20th century, championed the idea of the house as a machine for living. His designs, like the iconic Villa Savoy, 1931, prioritized efficiency, standardization, and a clear, rational expression of how a building works for its inhabitants. His 5 points of architecture were a systematic framework for design, driven by new concrete technologies and a deep commitment to functional utility. Ludwig Mies van der Rohe, 1886 to 1969, another German-American architect and director of the Bauhaus, famously coined the phrase, "less is more." Active from the early 20th century, his minimalist steel and glass structures, such as the Barcelona Pavilion, 1929, or the Seagram Building, 1958, exemplified a refined functionalism where the building's form was a direct, elegant expression of its structure and purpose, devoid of anything non-essential. Finally, let's explore the underlying intellectual currents of structuralism, whose foundational ideas were laid in the late 19th century, influencing cultural theories later in the 20th century. The crucial figure here is the Swiss linguist Ferdinand de Saussure, 1857 to 1913. Saussure revolutionized the study of language by focusing on its synchronous aspects, how it functions as a system at a specific point in time, rather than its historical evolution. He argued that language is an arbitrary and self-contained system. Words, or signs, gain their meaning not from direct reference to the external world, but from their relationships and differences with other signs within the language system. For example, the word cat means cat, not because of an inherent quality of the sound, but because it is not bat or hat. Meaning, therefore, is constructed within these systems of relationships. This profound insight, the existence of underlying structures or general codes that shape meaning, had a significant impact. While full-blown structuralism as a cultural theory emerged in the 1950s, its principles resonated with earlier modernist architects seeking a new universal architectural language. For architectural theory, this suggested that beyond surface aesthetics, there are deeper, underlying grammars or codes that dictate how spaces are organized and how buildings are understood. It encouraged architects to look for universal principles of composition, spatial relationships, and typologies, viewing a building not in isolation, but as a part of a larger system of architectural language, where elements gain meaning through their relationships and differences within that system. This idea of a systematic underlying structure can be seen clearly in the work of architects like Walter Gropius and Mies van der Rohe from the Bauhaus period and Le Corbusier. Their emphasis on modularity, standardization, and the creation of universal building types hinted at a search for an underlying architectural grammar that could be applied systematically. They aimed to create a coherent, rational system of design where elements derive meaning from their place within the overall architectural composition, much like Saussure's linguistic signs. So to connect the dots, the 19th century provided the fertile ground for these transformative philosophies. Kierkegaard's existential call for individual responsibility and meaning-making, later amplified by Sartre in the 20th century, paved the way for architects like Sullivan and Lloyd Wright to reject historical pastiche and seek authentic, self-determined forms. Simultaneously, Durkheim's functionalist view of systems and purpose directly fueled the form follows function ethos championed by Sullivan, and then rigorously applied by Walter Gropius, Le Corbusier, and Mies van der Rohe in their pursuit of efficient, rational design in the early 20th century. And underpinning much of this was Saussure's structuralist insight into systems and relationships, inspiring a search for universal architectural grammars and systematic approaches evident in the work of the Bauhaus and Le Corbusier. These philosophical currents were not isolated. They interwove to create a powerful intellectual scaffolding, moving architecture from mere imitation to a forward-looking discipline rooted in individual agency, systematic organization, and purposeful utility. They empowered architects of the late 19th and early 20th centuries to fundamentally reshape our built environment, laying the very foundations of modern architectural theory that continue to resonate and evolve even today. Thank you for joining me on this deep dive into the philosophical blueprints of modern architecture. If you found this explanation helpful, please hit that like button, share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more architectural explorations. Until next time, keep looking up.